Okay, so I invite you to this discussion about the innate immune system. So we did define the immune system as a complex network that is made up of cells, tissues, and organs, whose main purpose is to defend the body against harmful invaders. So these invaders, which are harmful, that now the immune system defends the body against, include things like bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. So for it to be able to defend the body against these invaders that are potentially harmful, the immune system then must be able to identify so that it can know that this is a harmful invader. And once it has identified, it should be able to neutralize them. Okay. But it has to do this while differentiating or distinguishing a harmful invader from the body's own healthy cells. When we were looking at the MHC, we talked about how the MHC is able to differentiate between what is self and what is non-self. So that is how the identification, the distinguishing feature of the immune system happens. It's courtesy of the MHC. If you look at that video, you will know how that happens. So the immune system is broadly divided or categorized into two branches. So one is the innate immunity, and the other one is the adaptive immunity. So the innate immunity is also called the non-specific because it provides defense against a wide range of pathogens. But the adaptive immunity is specific because it is a bit targeted to just it's a bit specific to the type of invaders that it provides immunity or protection against. So the innate immunity is the first line of defense. So that's the first line of defense that any invader meets when it's attempting to invade your body. So by doing that, it provides immediate protection. Okay. Another thing it is that it is non-specific. So innate immunity is non-specific, implying that it does not target a particular pathogen, but it instead offers generalized defense. So it means it can defend against a bacteria, it can defend against a virus, it can defend against a parasite. Okay, so it offers protection against a wide variety of pathogens. So the innate immune system is fast acting. It acts very fast because it's already there. But it does not have memory. So it does not remember that your body was once exposed to a particular pathogen. When it happens that that pathogen has to come and try to invade your body again. So it does not have that memory. But the adaptive immunity, which we are calling specific, is the second line. So after the first line, which is the innate immunity, the second line of defense is now the specific immunity or the adaptive immunity. This adaptive immunity is slower to respond, but it is highly specific. Okay, it responds, it takes time, but it is very specific to the type of pathogen that it responds to. Is highly specific. So unlike the innate immunity, the adaptive immune system recognizes and remembers pathogens. So it has memory, unlike the innate immunity, which it doesn't have memory. So by virtue of it having memory, then it leads to the provision of long-term protection. Okay. We'll see when in our next video we'll talk about the adaptive immunity more. But now we'll just talk about the innate immunity. So the adaptive immunity works in a coordination with the innate immunity, so that they both now provide a comprehensive defense against possible invaders into your body. So it means even if the immune system is divided into these two branches, they still coordinate both of them. One of them which is specific, the other one which is non-specific. One of them which acts fast, the other one which responds slowly. But both of them work hand in hand, so that they ensure that your body is able to fight infections. And it has to fight infections fast, at a faster response. That's the work of the innate immunity. But then it also has now to build long-term immunity. Long-term immunity is built through memory, which is now what the adaptive immunity is bringing in. So let's get deeper. Let's look deeper now into the innate immune system. So the innate immune system, as we've said, is the first line of defense against harmful pathogens. So it is rapid, but it is non-specific. Okay. So being rapid makes it to act immediately or within hours of detecting an infection. So for it, it does not need prior exposure because it does not have memory. Okay. And it does not as well develop long-term immunity. For it, it works fast and it does not need prior exposure to a pathogen for it to work. And after it has dealt with that pathogen, it does not develop memory of that pathogen. So the innate immune system is made up of largely physical barriers, chemical defenses, and specialized immune cells. All these, they work together to detect and eliminate invaders or threats before these threats can spread. Okay. So you talk about the physical barriers, things like the skin, the chemical defenses, you have tears, okay, saliva, you have acids within the stomach, even the vaginal secretions. Okay. And the cells, we'll see some of those cells, most of the APCs, the macrophages, the dendritic cells. Okay. Those are specialized. They work together so that they can ensure that wherever there is a threat, that threat is dealt with, is eliminated before that threat can spread widely in the body. So one thing with the innate immune system is that it is evolutionarily ancient. Inamaanisha ni ya kitambo na inapatikana across almost all living organisms. So you find them in plants, you find them in invertebrates, you find them in vertebrates. So you find the innate immune system across all living things, meaning it is likely to have been present with the most recent common ancestor for all living things. That's why inapatikana across all of them. So what are the characteristics of the innate immune system? One of the things, let me switch on my charger to my charger to my laptop. It was not it wasn't charging. I just switched it on. It was almost going off. So the first characteristic of the innate immune system is that it is the first line of defense against pathogens. So this innate system serves as the body's immediate response mechanism to any invading microbe. So it is the immediate, is the first response, is the first barrier, the first hurdle that any pathogen will encounter before invading your body. The first thing that it meets, the first challenge that your body presents to any pathogen is this innate immune system. So it prevents pathogens from entering the body, and it also eliminates those that manage to breach the initial barriers. So it tries to stop the pathogens from getting into your body. But in the event that the pathogens will maneuver this innate immune system and they gain entry, the innate immune system eliminates them once they've entered your body. So let's see some of the things that constitute now this innate immune system. So one, these are the physical barriers. So you talk of the skin, mucous membrane. Okay. In our respiratory tracts, you have cilia, hiyo manywele inakuwa kwa mapua, hiyo nywele inakuwa kwa lungs. What that does, it moves mucus. That mucus will have trapped microbes that will have otherwise found their way into the very delicate organs like the lungs. Okay. Then we have chemical barriers, so things like enzymes, which you find both in saliva and tears. Okay, so the enzymes in there, so saliva and tears, they have lysozyme. Lysozyme is an enzyme that will break down the cell walls of bacteria. In our stomach, we have acid. The stomach acid helps to destroy any microorganism that is ingested. Okay. Then we have the defensins and interferons. Defensins and interferons, these are proteins that will attack pathogens, okay, directly. Or if they cannot do that attack directly, they will interfere with the replication of these pathogens. So those three, you have the physical barriers, you have the chemical barriers. Those are critical components of the innate immune system, but we'll look at them again deeper at some place. The other characteristic of the innate immune system is that it is present and at birth and does not require previous exposure to a pathogen. So the innate system is fully functional from birth. So if you have a newborn, they are immediately protected against many infections because watakuwa na ngozi. Okay, watakuwa na all these barriers, all these chemicals that we've seen. A child is born with the tears, with saliva, with all the acids. Okay, so it is present at birth, and the child does not need to have had a prior infection before they have a skin. They will have the skin already. So this one does not require any previous exposure to a pathogen. The third characteristic is that it is non-specific. So it provides a non-specific response. A non-specific response means it attacks all pathogens in the same way. Okay, so its mode of action is broad. It's not specific to a particular pathogen, but all pathogens are attacked by the innate immune system. So this innate immune system does not distinguish between different types of pathogens. Okay, so it only recognizes a broad pattern that is common to many microorganisms, what we call the pathogen-associated molecular pattern. So there is something that the innate immunity will use to recognize that this is possibly a pathogen. Then most pathogens will have this pathogen-associated molecular pattern. So the innate system, the immune system, will just recognize that, and it will deal with almost many different types of pathogens because they have this molecular pattern. Then the other characteristic is that it acts immediately or within hours of infections. It is fast. Okay, so the innate immune system is fast acting. It often responds either within minutes or just 2 hours after an infection. So it is crucial that we need this response to be this rapid so that at least we can control infections at their very early stages of infection. So remember we said that the innate immune system either tries to stop the infection or eliminate. Okay? So by responding fast, it helps in ensuring that the infection is controlled before it becomes severe. Okay, so that's the fourth characteristic. The key mechanisms through which its immediate response, its fast response happens include, one is the inflammatory response. So when tissues are injured or infected, immune cells release histamines and cytokines. These two, the histamine and cytokines, they will ensure that there is an increase of blood flow to that area where the injury is. Okay? So as blood flows to that area, that blood is coming with immune cells because that area that has been infected or injured, it needs immune cells to come and fight that infection. Ndio huwa inafanya unaona ukigongwa pahali unafura. Okay? Because the immune cells will release histamine. Histamine leads to vasodilation. Okay? Then once vasodilation happens, then blood flow increases because upon vasodilating, pressure reduces. Then once pressure reduces, there will be more flow of blood to that particular area. The other mechanism is fever. Okay, so with the fever, there is an increase in temperature. Once temperatures are increased, then possibly the growth of pathogens will slow down. Once the pathogen is not growing, its growth has slowed down, then you can contain the spread of that pathogen. Then with the increased temperature, immune cell function is enhanced. So fever iko na faida mbili: slowing down pathogen growth and enhancing the function of the immune cells. Then the other thing is phagocytosis, where now you have macrophages and neutrophils coming in to swallow or to engulf and digest the microbes. Okay, so phagocytosis it happens by use of what we call a phagocytosome. So once the macrophage or the neutrophil or the dendritic cell has come in and swallowed or engulfed a microorganism, upon engulfing or swallowing this microorganism, that microorganism will now be digested. Okay, so itakuwa imemalizika. The fifth characteristic is that it is evolutionarily ancient. We said that it's found in all living things. So it is possible that it was there at the beginning of life, most likely. Okay, because you find it both in simple and very complex organisms. You find it in invertebrates, you find them in vertebrates, you also find them in plants. So inamaanisha all forms of life might have inherited this innate immune system from the common ancestor that they share. Okay, the common ancestor that they share. So what are the components of the innate immune system? So the innate immune system, as we said, is the first line of defense. It responds quickly and it is non-specific. Okay. It equally, unlike the adaptive immune system, it does not have a memory. So it reacts the same way to every pathogen using the molecular patterns that pathogens have. Okay, so it consists of several barriers, it consists of cells and other molecules, which all of them work together to protect the body. So these components include physical and chemical barriers. That's the first component. So these two barriers, they prevent the pathogens from entering the body. A barrier, kazi yake, is to prevent passage. So with the physical barriers, you are talking of the skin. This is the outermost layer, the epidermis, that is made up of tightly packed cells. So for it, it makes difficult for microbes to penetrate. So unless you have a cut on your skin, microorganisms will have it difficult penetrating and entering your cells inside your body. So that's the first line. That's the first barrier. The second barrier, physical barrier, the mucous membrane. So you find this in the respiratory, digestive, and the urogenital tracts. So mostly, these membranes will produce mucus. The work of the mucus is to trap microorganisms. Okay. Then it also contains antimicrobial substances. So kazi ya hiyo mucus, if a microorganism was to move into your respiratory tract, the mucus will trap it. That is a protection so that the microorganism does not get into some of those delicate organs in your body. Then you have cilia, which also forms part of the physical barriers. These are tiny hair-like structures that are found in the respiratory tract. So when cilia beats, ikigonga namna hii, inasaidia to move the mucus out of the lungs. The mucus will have trapped pathogens. Okay, so the mucus has trapped pathogens. But as the cilia keeps beating, it helps to move the mucus that has trapped pathogens out. Okay, so kazi ya cilia ni kusaidia kugonga so that isongeshe the mucus that has trapped pathogens in that lining so that you don't have these pathogens getting into your lungs. We now move to the chemical barriers. First chemical barrier, enzymes. We talked of the lysozyme. These are found in tears, in saliva, and even in mucus. What the lysozyme do is they help to break down the bacterial cell walls. Okay. Then within the stomach, we have pepsin. Pepsin helps in the digestion of proteins, but it also does help in killing so many microorganisms. Remember, for pepsin to work, there must be an acid. Okay, so the next chemical barrier is the acidic pH. Within the stomach, the pH is acidic, and that acidic pH in the stomach helps to kill any pathogen that will have found its way into the stomach. Equally, the vaginal secretions, they are also acidic. By that, they inhibit any harmful bacteria from growing within that part of your body. Then you have the third category of the chemical barrier as the antimicrobial peptides. So these are small proteins. They are antimicrobial, which means they work against microorganisms. So these are small proteins. Remember, peptides are the ones that make up proteins. So when you are talking of antimicrobial peptides, these are components of proteins that work against microorganisms. So these are small proteins that directly kill bacteria, fungi, and viruses. How do they kill? By disrupting their cell membranes. because the cell membrane is the outer covering. So once you disrupt it, then whatever content of these microorganisms will not be able to hold together. The second component of the innate immune system are the cellular components, or the innate immune cells. So these immune cells, they recognize and eliminate invaders. So it is them to recognize. To recognize means they are able to identify. So zinajua gani ndio invader na gani is part of your normal body cell. So once they've recognized the invader, then they eliminate that invader. They spare your normal body cell. The elimination of the invader happens through phagocytosis, direct killing, or chemical signaling. Chemical signaling, so that now the other component of the immune system can now come and pick it, because they've signaled that this is an invader that needs to be eliminated. Phagocytosis, that is the engulfing or the swallowing. Once it has phagocytosed, then it will digest that microbe. Direct killing is by making holes, punching the cell membrane. Okay. Once the cell membrane is punched, then that microorganism will not survive. So the cells that engulf and destroy pathogens, those are the phagocytic cells. The first, these are the neutrophils. Neutrophils happen to be the most abundant white blood cells. And they are the always fast responders to any infection. Wherever there is an infection, the first type of white blood cells to get there are always the neutrophils. What the neutrophils do is they engulf and destroy pathogens through phagocytosis. They also release enzymes and other reactive oxygen species, which lead to the killing of the microorganism that has invaded, that has infected the body. The other type of the phagocytic cell are the macrophages. These are derived from monocytes. Monocytes are a type of white blood cells. The macrophages, they are found in tissues, and where they are, they engulf and digest both microorganisms and dead cells. Also, they act as antigen-presenting cells. Okay, so you remember when we are talking about the major histocompatibility complex, the class 1 and the class 2. Okay, we talked of the class 2, which now deals with the antigen presenting cells. One of the cells we mentioned there were the macrophages. The dendritic cells are found either in the skin or on the mucosal surface. Dendritic cells, just like macrophages, they also capture pathogens and present the antigens of those pathogens. So once they've captured a pathogen, they destroy that pathogen and present the antigens of those pathogens to T cells. Okay, just like what the macrophages also does. The other cell, the first one was the phagocytic ones. We've seen the 3 types. The other cell is the natural killer cells. These are cells that kill virus-infected cells and also abnormal cells. So natural killer cells have a way of recognizing a cell that has a virus inside it or a cell that is abnormal. When do we say a cell is abnormal? Possibly when that cell is cancerous. So the natural killer cells will recognize a cell that has a virus in it and a cell that is cancerous. Once it has recognized that, it will release toxic molecules Examples of these are perforins and the granzymes. What the perforin does, perforin perforates. To perforate ni kuweka mashimo. Okay? So the perforin perforates the cell membrane. Once the cell membrane has been perforated, then that cell will die. What the granzymes do, on the other hand, is that they now lead to the what we call apoptosis. Apoptosis is the programmed cell death. So the granzymes will initiate that process of that cell dying naturally on its own. Okay? Because the natural killer cells are part of the innate immune system, they don't require prior exposure to a pathogen. Another type is the mast cells. These ones, they are the ones that trigger either an inflammation or an allergic response. Inflammations, we said, the release of histamine is what leads to vasodilation. Okay, so histamine is released and other chemicals are also released so that inflammation is promoted. Mast cells also play a key role in allergic reactions and wound healing. The last type of these cells within the innate, as a component of the innate immune system are the eosinophils and the basophils. Okay, so these are cells that fight parasites and mediate allergies. By fighting parasites, the eosinophils target parasitic infections by releasing toxic proteins. So whenever there is a parasitic infection, when you have a parasite infecting your body, eosinophils will release proteins that are toxic to that parasite. Okay, so that protein is what will lead to the killing of that parasite. Basophils release histamine and other inflammatory molecules. So histamine and these other inflammatory molecules are the ones that will help to amplify the immune responses. Histamine does vasodilation. Vasodilation is what now leads to a reduction in pressure and an increase in blood flow. As blood flows to that area, it brings with it other immune cells. The third component is what we call the complement system. So this is a group of proteins within the blood, and what this group of proteins do is that they help in destroying microorganisms. Okay. So they destroy microorganisms and they enhance the immune response. So the complement system is a defense system that is based on proteins. How the defense system works is by destroying microorganisms and enhancing the immune response. So the complement system works or does its work through three major ways. One, its first function is opsonization. To opsonize is to coat pathogens, to mark, yani kuweka alama juu ya pathogen. Okay, so it puts a mark on the pathogen. It coats that pathogen so that it is easier for the phagocytes to recognize and destroy that pathogen. So opsonization is coating, kuweka alama, putting a coat, putting a mark on a pathogen. Inflammation, as we've seen, is a process through which other immune cells are brought to the infection site. Okay, a major component of the inflammation process, as we saw, is histamine. The third function is the membrane attack complex. This is now what the perforin does. It forms pores, mashimo, okay, on the microbial membranes, on the membranes of those microorganisms that will have attacked your body, that will have invaded into your body. Those spores, hiyo mashimo yenye inatengenezwa na the membrane attack complex, are the ones that will make that microorganism to burst. Once the microorganism has bursted, then it will have died. Okay, so it will no longer cause infections. The fourth component of the innate immune system is the inflammatory response. So wherever there is an infection or an injury within your body, an inflammation will be triggered. Okay, so your body, after detecting either an injury or an infection, it will trigger, it will lead to an inflammation happening. Through the triggering of the inflammation, there will be an increase of blood flow. Ukiona mahali penye ukiumwa na nyuki ama umwe na anything, that place usually swells. Then ukiangalia, unaona ni kama it becomes a bit more red, because the redness and the warmth is because of the increased blood flow to that place. And as the blood comes in, the swelling will happen because there is more fluid and there are more immune cells that have been moved into that place. The immune cells that have been brought in, they are the ones that are now coming to work on the invader, to work on whatever it is that has infected that particular site. So through that, the pathogen will be contained and possibly eliminated. So there will be an increase in blood flow, there will be swelling. Utaona ati umeumwa na nyuki na hiyo pali imefura, ama umeumwa na mosquito, ama umeumwa na anything, that place will swell. It's just an inflammatory response. Okay? And through the increase of blood flow, hiyo place inakuwa warm. Ukishika mahali penye umeumwa na anything, it is warmer than your other body part. Why? Because there is an increase of blood flow to that place. The increase of blood flow brings in more fluid, more immune cells into that area, then it swells. The immune cells that have been brought in to that place of infection, that is where the infection has been introduced into your body. So the immune cells come in kujaribu kuharibu your infection. That's why it's like that is the gate that now the infection has gotten into your body. You go to Alupe University, you find many watchmen at the gate, because that is the place of entry. If you get there and they realize you shouldn't get to the university, they will contain you and eliminate you wakutoe nje ya university. So to contain is to stop you. Then to eliminate is to get you out of the university. So that is exactly what this is doing. So the key molecules that are involved in inflammation, one is histamine. Okay. So histamine causes blood vessels to widen. We call that vasodilation. Okay. As the blood vessels widen, blood flows into that place. By blood flowing, the immune cells come. So they will also reach at that site of infection. Cytokines also play a key role in inflammation. Cytokines are small proteins that help to regulate the immune response. Okay. The last component are the pattern recognition receptors and pathogen detection. So the innate immune system, these cells of the innate immune system, they recognize pathogens using these pattern recognition receptors. So these recognition receptors are what enables them to detect the unique features of microbes. Those unique features of microbes are what we call the pathogen-associated molecular patterns. So these are molecular patterns that are associated with the pathogens. So the immune cells that work with the innate immune system recognize these molecular patterns that are associated with the pathogen. Once they recognize those, then wanajua this is a pathogen. Then now they swing into action because they've recognized that this is a pathogen. Okay, so the pattern of recognition receptors, that is what leads to the pathogen detection. Okay. So remember we said the innate immune system is not specific. It deals with a wide range of pathogens. But these pathogens, most of them, if not all, will have a pattern, a molecular pattern that is associated with pathogens. So the innate immune cells will now recognize that pathogen associated molecular pattern. Once wakiona hiyo, wanajua this is a pathogen. Okay. So the PAMPs ni kama an identifier, something that identifies pathogens. So the innate immune cells look out for that pattern. Once they see that pattern, then wanajua this is a pathogen. Then now they have to attack that pathogen. So as a summary of the innate immune system, we have the physical barriers. The function of the physical barriers is to block pathogens from entering the body. We have examples of the physical barriers for us: the skin, the mucus, and cilia. The chemical barriers, what they do is they destroy microbes, either using enzymes, acids, or antimicrobial peptides. Neutrophils, these are cells that are the first responders, and what they do is they engulf pathogens. They swallow the pathogens. Macrophages also eat pathogens, and they also help in activating the adaptive immune system. Dendritic cells, they link the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system because they are antigen presenting cells. They are NPCs. NK cells, these are the natural killer cells. So they kill both cells that are infected by viruses and cells that are abnormal, so the cancerous cells. Mast cells, they release histamine. Histamine triggers inflammation. Okay. The eosinophils and the basophils. The eosinophils fight parasites. The basophils contribute to allergies. The complement system, it enhances immune responses and it also leads to the destruction of pathogens. Then the inflammatory response, it attracts immune cells and it also helps in eliminating the infection. Okay. So how exactly does the innate immune system work? So let's give it a step-by-step process. Let's look at it in a step-by-step. So one is the point where now the pathogen enters. Remember, if it inhibits the pathogen, then it will not enter. Okay? But if there is entry, then it means it imepita the first line of defense, which is the skin. So imeingia ndani ya mwili. So pathogen entry, either bacteria, which is a pathogen, a virus, or any other, enters the body. Then, once it is inside now, the immune cells have to detect. So wanaangalia now the recognition components. Waangalie, are we seeing any pattern that is associated with a pathogen in this invader? Okay, so that's how the recognition happens. Then, once they recognize that yes, it is an invader, it's something foreign, based on the pathogen-associated molecular pattern, an inflammatory response will be triggered. So you have the cytokines and the histamines now triggering an inflammation. Why is it important that the inflammation is triggered now? Because they've realized this is a pathogen. So they need to bring in more immune cells. It's as if unaona kuna mwizi. So what you do, you raise an alarm so that more people can come to help you. Then once an inflammatory response has been initiated, phagocytosis happens. So neutrophils and macrophages, they both engulf and digest. Okay? Once the pathogen has been engulfed and digested, obviously it will lead to death. Okay? So the killing of the pathogen, it happens with the complement proteins, the antimicrobial peptides, the natural killer cells. All these help in eliminating that threat, which is now the foreign invader. Once the pathogen has been killed, then there has been resolution and healing. So the immune system now clears the debris. The pathogen, ile imeuawa sasa, the remnants of the pathogen, those are the debris. So they should be cleared, and the affected area where now the pathogen entered through should be allowed to heal. Then once that happens, then homeostasis returns. So kama kuna mahali uliumwa na kitu ikaingilia hapo, then that place now heals. Then unaona hiyo pahali penye uliumwa na umbu ama inzi ama nyuki yenye uliumwa kwa ngozi yako, sasa inapona. Then now it returns to normal. Okay? So among the key features of the innate immune system, one is immediate response. It acts within hours, within minutes. The second feature, it is non-specific, does not target a specific pathogen. It does not have memory, so it does not remember the previous infection. It works with the adaptive immunity. We will now look at the adaptive immunity next. It is highly conserved because it is found both in simple and complex organisms. So it is evolutionarily conserved. So in conclusion, the innate immune system provides a fast and non-specific response to pathogens. It does so by relying on barriers. So you have the physical and chemical barriers. It also relies on immune cells. It also relies on inflammatory signals. It also relies on complement proteins in fighting those infections. However, it does not remember past infections. Okay? So it does not have a memory. But most importantly, it works with the adaptive immune system to ensure that there is a longer lasting and stronger defense against any repeated threat. So it does not work on its own, but it works hand in hand with the adaptive immune system. Okay, so that there is a longer lasting defense. If something wants to attack you repeatedly, now the adaptive immune system comes in to help, and it works hand in hand now with the innate immune system. So that brings me to the end of the innate immune system, but now it ushers me into the adaptive immune system. And that is now coming up in our next video. Okay, so listen to this, read through the notes. After you've understood this, then now look out for the next one, which will be talking about the adaptive immune system. Thank you very much.